When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With TwinSpires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with TwinSpires and use stable alerts to never miss a bet.
We are live with the TwinSpires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson with James Scully and Vance Hanson. This is one take only. We have never done Racing Roundtable live. Today we're going to talk Florida Derby, Arkansas Derby, the Gulfstream Park Oaks, and the Fantasy plus Dubai World Cup night. So let's jump right in. And James, tell me your thoughts on the Florida Derby and the Arkansas Derby, both 100-point prep races, and Fierceness especially rebounded in style this weekend. So what were your takeaways?
Well, Fierceness likely assumed a favorite's mantle for the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby on May 4th with his brilliant 13.5 length win. He generated a 106 Brisnet speed rating. That's easily the top number from 20 qualifiers so far in 2024. And he's going to bring serious speed to the Kentucky Derby starting gate. Now, granted, he did have everything his own way on the front end after Hades, who had put in a front running performance in the Holy Bull, missed the start of the Florida Derby, and Conquest Warrior, his other main rival in the field, never made any impact from off the pace. So it was a fairly easy prep win for him, and circumstances could be different in the Derby. But I will say that while inconsistency has been a major issue for him, that he's still a threat if he breaks running in the Derby to get out there on the front end and lead wire to wire. I have some, doubts myself about his chances, but I certainly respect him off of that brilliant effort in the Florida Derby. As far as the Preakness goes, Muth, he's not eligible for the Kentucky Derby, so he's going to head to the Preakness off of his win. I thought it was a really sharp performance by him. He's going to be one of the favorites in the Preakness on May 18th. I did think Just Steele, I was really impressed by how he turned things around for Dwayne Lucas in the Arkansas Derby. This is a colt who was a non-threatening second 2 starts back in the Southwest and showed absolutely nothing in the Rebel. He took an enormous step forward for the coach, Just Steele did. And I'll point out, Dwayne Lucas won the Derby 4 times before, and in 1999, Charismatic was like banging around, not playing any kind of serious factor in stakes races and other races early in the season. But when his final prep, he won the Lexington Stakes. He carried that form forward in the Derby at like 30-1. So I did think Just Steele, he's the kind of horse I'm going to use in my vertical exotic wagers. Mystic Dan, I thought he regressed off of that race in the Southwest. He ran okay for third, but was never like a threat to even Just Steele for second. And Timberlake, an enormous disappointment. Here's a colt that settles in third early in the race, takes off between rivals, leaving the first turn to take a short lead on the back stretch, and then by the top of the stretch he was done. He held on for fourth, but that was a real, I thought, setback to his chances. Does not give any confidence in his ability to go 1.25 miles. So I would take away, those races definitely could have an impact on the Kentucky Derby, but I still have a lot of interest in the Bluegrass this weekend, the Wood Memorial, and nothing is clinched in my mind based upon these 2 races this weekend. Vance, what did you think about the Florida Derby and the Arkansas Derby?
Well, I'd echo a lot of your sentiments about Fierceness. He does figure to be a Kentucky Derby favorite that many bettors are going to want to try and beat after having things go his own way at Gulfstream Park. It was still a rather impressive performance, record-setting margin of victory, easily eclipsing Empire Maker's 9 3/4 length win in 2003, and it was also the third time he's cracked the triple-digit Brisnet speed rating plateau. So there's no question that Fierceness is the fastest horse in the crop on his best day, but I think he needed a stiffer challenge in the Florida Derby to answer any lingering questions I had regarding his ability to overcome adversity. So to me, I think Fierceness goes into the Kentucky Derby as a formidable favorite and a justifiable one, but he's one that I'm probably going to try and beat at 7-2, 3-1, 5-2, whatever he goes off at. As far as Muth's performance in the Arkansas Derby, I thought that performance continued to flatter the Breeders' Cup juvenile form. Fierceness, of course, won at Gulfstream earlier in the day. Muth flattered the Breeders' Cup form even more. I thought it was a solid victory at Oaklawn, served as a good possible prep for the Preakness. And like you, I'm not so bullish on most of the horses in behind him. I would also include Just Steel. I know you liked his step forward there, but I don't think it turned him necessarily into a strong Kentucky Derby contender. Just Steel, Mystic Dan, Timberlake, I don't think any of their Kentucky Derby credentials were necessarily enhanced. I'm not overly keen on those that ran behind Fierceness either. So I think Fierceness and going into the Kentucky Derby and Muth potentially into the Preakness, those are the two major horses I'd take forward. I think the only exception I would note is that Mystic Dan and Timberlake are both well versed on sloppy tracks. If the track came up wet on Derby Day, I'd have to reevaluate them a little bit. But I think overall, their Derby prospects, I don't think were enhanced that much, Ashley.
So with Fierceness and Timberlake too, they both have this interesting pattern where they win big and then they lose. Now the opposite happened this weekend. Fierceness obviously rebounded by more than 13 lengths, and then Timberlake was coming off a loss. Have this backward now. He was coming off a win, so he lost this race. But the pattern goes win, loss for both these horses. However, as you said, James, I agree with you. I don't think Timberlake's going to handle a 1.25 miles. Sloppy track, though, maybe we see something different. But if I'm going with a Brad Cox horse at the moment, I'm going with Catching Freedom, who won the Louisiana Derby. Now with Fierceness, I really like this horse. I want him to show up on the first Saturday of May. I just don't think he's going to, and I don't think we're going to get a good price either way. He's 7-2 in pool 6 at the Kentucky Derby future wager. As far as Timberlake, he's 30-1. So if you think he might bounce back, maybe take that 30-1 price this weekend in pool 6. And also wanted to note that we have Honor Marie at 20-1, who was a link second to Catching Freedom, who I just mentioned, another interesting price in the future wagers. But I don't think I like 7-2 for Fierceness, because I just don't think you can trust he's going to show up. But when he does, he's going to win big. So just an interesting horse that I can't make sense of. And I feel like last year I had the same thing with another Todd Pletcher runner, Tappet Trice, who kept breaking poorly. And then sure enough, he broke poorly in the Kentucky Derby and finished 7th. So I'm not going to let myself repeat history here. My gut's saying that Fierceness is not going to show up in a 20-horse field. I'd love to see it. I just don't think it's going to happen. So got to learn from my past mistakes here. Fierceness showed me who he is. So I gotta go with what he's shown me. Well, let's talk about the Kentucky Oaks press we had this weekend with Thorpedo Anna winning by 4 lengths in the fantasy. And then we had Power Squeeze extend her win streak to 4, winning the Gulfstream Park Oaks. So Vance, do you think either of these fillies are legitimate Oaks contenders?
Yeah, I do. I thought both looked really good winning, and they're both logical contenders. And of course, I'd also mention the Gulfstream Park Oaks runner-up Ways and Means, who was the odds-on favorite. She's likely to attract a lot of Oaks support as well, because after she endured a difficult trip at Gulfstream entering the first turn, and she likely needed that race also for fitness purposes. So I'd throw her in amongst the two winners as well. Between Power Squeeze and Thorpedo Anna, I'd probably lean towards Power Squeeze being the more effective of the two. I think she's got a stouter pedigree for 1.1 miles, and her greater activity leading up to the Oaks, I think, is another plus in her favor. On the other hand, Thorpedo Anna has only had one bump in the road on her record. That was her distant second place finish to Intricate in the Goldenrod, and she clearly loves Churchill Downs, and Power Squeeze has yet to run over that surface. And it was also noted over the weekend that Thorpedo Anna had been working in company with Mystic Dan, which isn't a bad thing for a filly, and she was actually doing very well against him in their morning trials. So she's been battle tested in the mornings this spring, if not on the racetrack. One final thing I'd note is that Thorpedo Anna's victory in the fantasy came amidst a hot streak on Saturday for trainer Kenny McPeak and jockey Brian Hernandez. I think Thorpedo Anna was the 4th win for that combo on the day. So it will be interesting to see if Thorpedo Anna is able to recreate that success on the first Friday in May, if her connections don't happen to be firing on all cylinders leading up to that race, James.
Yeah, I thought that Thorpedo Anna, I really liked her comeback effort. She'd run her first two races at one turn distances and had won them brilliantly. But Intricate beat her pretty handily in the Kentucky in the Goldenrod, her final juvenile start. So she comes back off this long layoff. She shows good positional speed to stalking the front runners in third. And then I just thought it was a powerful move off the far turn to take this clear lead into the stretch and just carry it all the way to the wire. I thought, it couldn't be a more encouraging comebacker. You look at the way she ran, if she takes a step forward upon this performance, I definitely a very viable, serious contender in the Kentucky Oaks. Now, granted, she will have to step up and face deeper competition. We've got a real dynamite Oaks prep coming up this Friday at Keeneland and the Ashland. But as far just based on visual, I thought Thorpedo Anna looked terrific. And then I'll echo Vance's sentiments on Power Squeeze. This is a filly that's won 4 in a row. She's bred for longer distance. She had run strictly at one-turn trips as well until 2 starts back in that Suncoast. Power Squeeze was real impressive, winning that race at a mile and a 70-yard distance. She went a mile and a 16th on Saturday. And her run style, if there's a lot of pace in the Oaks, could be favorable as well, given her strong finishing kick she's been displaying. So I saw both. I saw both runners. I thought those were very encouraging preps by both. Ways and Means is obviously super talented, and if the Oaks was at a mile and a 16th distance, she might be the one to beat in my eyes. I'm a little bit worried about her going 9 furlongs off of that one race. But you can see both. We saw the Derby leaderboard earlier, Ashley and Vance, and now we're looking at the Kentucky Oaks leaderboard. And I think you can really tell this year they've added more points to every qualifier, adding a 5th place. Like the final 8 qualifiers went from 170 total points to 200. And we're seeing higher point totals that's going to be necessary to get in some of these races. So a filly like Intricate, she's 14th, and there's still 3 prep remaining. She could find herself on the fence or outside the bubble looking in the weeks leading up to the Oaks. So I thought that was a good weekend for both races. It's definitely added potential star quality to the mix. With Fierceness in the Derby and maybe Thorpedo Anna and Power Oaks in the Kentucky Oaks, Ashley.
So my knock with Power Squeeze is I feel like she hadn't faced as tough a competition as Thorpedo Anna did. Of course, we had in the fantasy, we had Lemon Muffin, who won the Honeybee. We also had West Omaha, who won the Silver Bullet Day. And then my main squeeze was the multiple stakes score, the post-time favorite. I felt like there was a little bit stronger competition, but obviously Ways and Means in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, a very good filly as well. Power Squeeze actually had a 95 brisk net speed figure, which was 4 points higher than the 91 that Thorpedo Anna received for her win. But Thorpedo Anna also has 2 starts at Churchill, and she won by 9 lengths and an allowance optional claimer there. So I'm giving her the edge right now as the Kentucky Oaks contender, but like you've mentioned, this weekend, we've got another prep with a lot of really good fillies, just FYI. Candied making their 3-year-old debut, and Jody's Pride as well, we're going to see. So
Impel
as well, yes.
Yeah.
So all those fillies, well, really, I don't know if I'd put Jody's Pride in there, but the other 3, I think, could be really, really strong Oaks contenders, and we'll see if things change after Saturday. Well, lastly, let's talk Dubai World Cup night. We had Forever Young show up and win the UAE Derby and now has 5 straight wins, unbeaten from 5 starts. We also had an upset with Laurel River this weekend. So, James, what were your thoughts from Dubai World Cup night?
Well, I'm going to focus on Forever Young. He broke from a disadvantageous outside post, furthest outside post in the race, and was wide the entire way. So he lost valuable ground going a mile and 3/16 distance, but he still, he got a better trip than he did when he going a 1-turn mile in Saudi Arabia, where he was so far back early and really had to have a stirring late run to reel in Bookham Dano. Here he was able to start the pace in 5th, make his move off the far turn. I thought the pace setter ran pretty well, was pretty stubborn. But once Forever Young, seemingly, collared him, he put him away pretty decisively, I thought, in the end. And one thing about this performance is it echoes the same concerns we had that I had in his previous race, where you're going wide the entire way. You're not taking any kickback in this trip whatsoever. There's going to be the potential for kickback in the Derby, especially if you're a stalker who can't make his own trip on the front end. So, kickback is one of those things where hey, it's a concern, but it might not be an issue at all. I'm not saying that's going to derail Forever Young's chances in the Derby. Obviously, no internationally based horse has won the Kentucky Derby since Canonero in 1971. No UAE Derby winner has hit the board in the Kentucky Derby. But the fact remains that the Japanese have set their sights on on the UAE Derby and the Kentucky Derby. This will be the third consecutive year they've won the race and sent a horse to the Kentucky Derby at Churchill. And I think Forever Young is way better or better at least, than Dermisata Gakde and Crown Pride. So he's got a chance. I mean, a lot of people think it's not a matter of if, but when these Japanese will ship over and win the Kentucky Derby. This is an unbeaten, very talented 3-year-old. If he gets the trip and, handles any potential kickback, he's going to be in there with a chance to win it, I think, Vance.
Yeah, I'm going to concentrate on the Dubai World Cup winner, Laurel River, who is obviously the standout performer on the evening, winning by such a monstrous margin in wire-to-wire fashion. And few of us who saw him compete in the U.S. with Bob Baffert over the last season or two running in sprints and mile races out in California would have expected him to run like that over a mile and a quarter, but he did. And it was extremely impressive, one of the most impressive World Cup winners we've ever seen. There's not much to get excited about him, though, for the rest of the season because his connections have said that they're essentially putting him away and aiming for next winter's Saudi Cup and Dubai World Cup repeat performance. So that's somewhat disappointing, I guess, since Laurel River has run over in this country before. He would have enhanced the Breeders' Cup Classic field, no doubt about it, but we're not going to see that. So we'll set Laurel River aside until next winter. The other thing on World Cup night that I would note is that even though Japan has had more successful Dubai World Cup nights, I thought they still had an incredible evening with their contingent. In addition to Forever Young's win in the UAE Derby, they also ran second in the World Cup with Ushba Tesoro, who we probably will see again in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And they also had a string of long shots that finished in second in the Golden Shaheen, the Dubai Turf, and the Shima Classic, outrunning some very good horses, not only from their country that were more highly favored, but also some top European horses like Auguste Rodin. So, and these string of long shot seconds, these horses were going off at 22 to 1, 33 to 1. So they were outperforming expectations in those races. The Dubai World Cup card is a fixture that the Japanese have been targeting for years now and will continue to target, and bettors are going to have to be wise to start thinking and using more of their entrants in their exotics plans, regardless of how relatively overmatched they might appear on paper, Ashley.
I'm going to take it back to Forever Young for a second, because with Derby implications here and the history we have that he has to overcome, Japanese runners are 0 for 6 in the Derby so far. Their best finish, we had them cross the wire at 6 2 different times, but Master Fencer was elevated to 5th. So that's the best finish we have in the Derby from the Japanese runners. But we also have 19 starters from the UAE Derby, and none of them have won the Kentucky Derby either. So there's a lot that is going against Forever Young. But I have to say, I feel like you, James, I feel the best about his chances compared to any Japanese runner we've had so far. While last year I let people get in my head about Dermisota Gakde, and I totally changed my wagers. And I talked about it earlier, learning from the past. I'm not going to let people get in my head this time, but I do feel like Forever Young, I think we might see him hit the board at least, which would be, defying some history there too. So I certainly think he's one to watch, but he's opening at 10 to 1 in pool 6 at the Kentucky Derby future wager. I'm curious, James, would you back him at 10 to 1? Is that a little low, do you think?
Well, I think it's a little low for a future wager, but I mean, if you love his chances in the Kentucky Derby and he's sitting there at 10 to 1 on Sunday, I almost think you're getting a better price there. Dermisota Gakde went off 7.60 to 1 last year. I thought he had a lot of support in the build up to the race. I think being unbeaten 5 for 5 like Forever Young is, I think he has a much bigger reputation, and I look for him to get a huge groundswell of support in the days and final weeks leading up to the race. So I anticipating him being no worse than the third choice in the betting. I think it's the potential exists for him to maybe even be lower, but I think he'll be less than 10-1 by post time, and those odds are a little bit short in my eyes.
Well, that's interesting because we've got Sierra Leone competing this weekend. Dornoch, if Dornoch
Yeah, I
wins.
mean, obviously Fierceness is going to be one of the top three choices. Sierra Leone's the other one. Now, I don't know if Dornick or Just a Touch, if they were to upset the Bluegrass, would be lower odds than Forever Young in the Derby. So that's the real question, I think. How well does Sierra Leone win or run? If he wins, he's going to be in the mix as well for the favoritism.
Well, we've got 3 more 100-point Derby props this weekend. We've got Pool 6, the Kentucky Derby Future Wager, opening on Friday. So definitely check that out. We also have Power Hour on Friday, and James and I will be live handicapping Power Hour. We have a 15% boost, so check that out as well. We got a lot going on. We're getting close to the Derby. That's all the time we have today for the Racing Roundtable. We'll be back live next Tuesday as well, and check us out on the TwinSpires Jury on Thursday with our best bets and fades. We'll see you next time.